the manual is America's best anti-theft device because no one can drive stick shift. Transmissions. They make the cars move, they make the cars basically work because, while yes, the engine is the main powertrain or the main component that obviously lets the car run, you're not going to go anywhere without a transmission. And in today's video, I want to cover the 3 different types of transmissions that you're more likely to come across when you're shopping for a new vehicle. Now, the first one that we have here today is what is known as the manual transmission, or you may also hear stick shift. All of those names attribute to one thing. It means that you are the person that changes the gears when it comes to how the car drives. So a manual transmission functions the same way as an automatic would, except in this case, you don't have a torque converter. You are essentially the torque converter in this case. You have a manual clutch pedal, which is not there in the other 2 transmissions. And every time you want to move between gears, is, you know, in this Mustang, we're sitting in a 2022 Roush Track Pack Mustang GT, and this one is a 6-speed manual. Every time I want to switch gears, I do it because that's what a manual is. I have a clutch pedal, I push the clutch in to disengage the transmission from the engine, and then I switch gears and then just let the pedal out. That's basically, in layman's terms, the easiest way you can explain a manual is you are the torque converter, I guess you could say it, because, as I said, in this case, I'm the one that switches gears, not the other way around. Now, manuals have started to become a little bit more of a rare breed when it comes to transmissions in the United States. The most popular being obviously the automatic, but that wasn't always the case. When vehicles first started coming out in the early 20th century, everything was manual. Manual was the only way because that it was just the easiest to design, the easiest to develop, and it was just what was developed at the time. But as time went forward, companies developed the automatic, and it just became easier for a lot of people to drive automatic because you don't have to, use the clutch. You don't have to do all these kind of things. Now, when it comes to enthusiast perspectives, like I'm going to use myself as an example, I prefer a manual because it's more engaging. It gives you a better feeling of the car because, while yeah, in the automatic it's going to be faster in most cases nowadays, all you have to do is just push the gas and it goes, right? Here, on the other hand, it's like you're more connected to the vehicle. I mean, if I want to, right now we're sitting in 4th gear. If I kind of want to go a little bit faster, I just push the clutch in, I push down, pull it to 3rd, and then it's just so much more fun to drive. It gives you that much more engagement and just basically being one with the vehicle. That's the whole aspect of a manual transmission, is you're basically connected. You're helping the engine. You're being a part of what happens. And while, as I said, modern day automatics are fast, they're not as engaging as the manual is. And the reason I say it's becoming a rare breed is because you don't see them that much anymore. There's a funny joke that runs around that says that the manual is America's best anti-theft device because no one can drive stick shift. And it's true. It's kind of sad, but it's true. It is so much fun to drive. It's so much fun to drive. And then when you downshift, this specific Mustang has what is called rev matching. So when I just basically go ahead to downshift the second, it sounds really good. It just sounds really good, and it feels so much better when you're doing it yourself, especially in a sports car. Now, for many people, learning to drive manual is one of the most nerve-wracking, anxious, jaunting things because the hardest part to driving a manual transmission vehicle is taking off. When you take off, once you learn how to do that, you know how to drive a manual. That's exactly how it is, I promise. Once you learn how to drive it, you're good to go. And if you want to learn how to drive manual, we do have a video on the channel. You're gonna have to go back I think it's a few months, but we have a video out there of how to drive manual. It's funny enough on the same Mustang. So let's go ahead and jump into an automatic, and then we'll continue this discussion. And now we have the most popular transmission in the United States by far, the automatic. And the automatic has been around, or at least predominantly in the States, I want to say for about the last 30 to 40 years has been the dominant transmission, because most people prefer just to get in, start the car up, put it in drive, and just go. Don't have to worry about, you know, the clutch and switching gears. It's easy with this thing. Now, the main difference between this and the manual, as I said, is this thing has a torque converter, whereas the manual does not. And of course, there are other types of transmissions, like we could talk about the dual clutch and all that. They don't use a torque converter, but that's for a more advanced video. And today, I'm just trying to cover the basics. Now, in terms of the automatic versus the manual, this is by far the easier transmission to drive. I mean, there's not really much thought to it. All you have to do is get in, push the button to start the Mustang, put it in drive, and you're done. I mean, that's it. You're driving. Whereas the manual, you know, you have to push the clutch in, put it in first, take off, and then start switching gears from there. Now, as mentioned during our manual section, I mentioned that the manual does not have a torque converter. And that's true. The manual transmission, you are technically the torque converter. You're the one that switches gears. You're the one that does everything. Whereas with the automatic, there is a torque converter inside here. Now, quick disclaimer, I know there are multiple different versions of it, like a dual clutch and Lamborghinis and all that, where they don't have a torque converter. But in today's video, I just want to stick to the basics. Those are more advanced. So we're going to pretend all these have a torque converter. And yeah, so I know the dual clutches don't have one, but please, for today's video, let's just stick to the regular automatic. So this specific one here is a 10-speed automatic, which means that it has 10 gears. Now, what does that mean? Well, as I showed you guys in the manual, you can switch between gears. So that one had it was a 6-speed manual, so 6 gears. So first, second, third, fourth, 5, 6. Here you have 10, because the Mustang, the options for the GT Mustang are the 10-speed automatic or the 6-speed manual. And of course, this one, as I said, has a 10-speed. This right here is a 2022 Roush Track Pack Mustang. It's essentially the same Mustang as the one we just got out of, except this one's a darker blue and it has an automatic, but it's virtually the same car. So now the way automatics function is, you may think it's, oh, you just get in and start it, put it in drive. Yeah, that's the layman's term, basic concept, right? But the way they truly function is you have a torque converter. Every time you hear it switch gears, that torque converter has clutch packs inside, which clutches are what we discussed with the manual, where you push the clutch in. There's one clutch on the manual, and then you use it to switch. In the automatic, each single gear, they call them packs, each single one has clutches in it. So clutch pack 1, clutch pack 2, clutch pack 3, those are all different gears. And the way it works is every time the transmission shifts, it goes into a different clutch pack. So right now we're cruising in 10th gear because I'm just going normally. If I give it a little bit of throttle to pass somebody, it just went down to 7th. So it switches directly to the 7th gear clutch pack and allows us to, you know, progress. And what clutch packs do is they basically allow the transmission obviously to shift to allow it to go to a higher speed, because you can't be driving at 80 miles an hour in first gear. Now, that also has some stuff to do with the rear differential, but we're not going to get into that today. But it switches gears, 1, for fuel economy, and 2, because you actually, to go anywhere, and you know, you don't want your vehicle sitting at 6,000 RPM, you have to switch gears. And the automatic does that through the torque converter. Torque converter is basically as in it's the one that switches the gears, and it shifts through the gears. So obviously there's a little bit more stuff to it. The manual transmission is the least complicated, the most simplistic version of a transmission. It's literally just gears inside and then the clutch, whereas these ones are a little bit more complicated. Now, I said earlier that the best anti-theft device in this country is the manual, and that's true, because most people don't know how to drive stick shift anymore. Why? And then, you know, why would you learn how to drive stick shift when this is so easy to drive? And in most cases today's automatics are faster than the manual transmission. This Roush Mustang is faster than the other one we drove, than the manual one, because this 10-speed is just, I mean, it shifts so fast. It's just, you know, it's, to some people that's awesome because they're fast. Some people it's kind of whatever. Like me personally, I mentioned earlier, I'm an enthusiast. I prefer the manual because it connects me more to the vehicle. But I will admit, automatics are just faster. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Lamborghinis and all that. They don't come with manuals. They only come with the dual clutch automatics because they're much faster to shift. And I right there, I wasn't even flooring it. But the 10-speed is it's a beast of transmission. And one thing I do want to discuss is when you're shopping for some of these cars, like let's say you're shopping for this Mustang, it'll say 10-speed with manual shiftability. What that means is if you put the lever down to sport mode, and then you flick one of the paddles on the steering wheel, you flick it, it's going to put it in manual. So now that it's in manual mode, I can shift gears myself. So as you guys can hear, I'm decreasing gears. So taking off, it's gonna stay in first until I push this paddle. And then it's gonna shift. I mean, just listen to how fast it shifts. You almost don't even feel it shifting. And then of course, if you wanna have some fun, you kind of slow down a little bit and then you just flick the left paddle, which is a downshift. I mean, it is a very fast shifting transmission. The 10-speed that Ford put in these Mustangs definitely revolutionized how quickly how quick the car is. And most people will actually tell you that they prefer the automatic over the manual. Now, as I said, it's personal preference at that point, but I can understand why a lot of people would pick this. It is a very nice transmission and it's very quick shifting. Now, there is one more that we have to discuss that it's sort of separate to where it's different enough where I don't want to mention it with these, and it's called the CVT. But let me switch cars. We're going to grab a CVT transmission vehicle, and I'll be right back, and we can talk about that. So to finally close out this video, we got to talk about the CVT, or the continuously variable transmission. And quick disclaimer, I was not able to get a Ford for this because the only CVT vehicles that Ford makes are hybrids, and unfortunately we don't have any right now. They're just in high demand, so we don't have any hybrid Escapes or anything. But I've had to hop into this 2019 Honda Civic Sport to kind of show you guys exactly what a CVT is and why it differentiates it between a regular automatic. Funny enough, let's take a little history lesson. The original design of the CVT was created by Leonardo da Vinci like 500 years ago. So it wasn't actually started to, it didn't go into like vehicles until about, I want to say like the 90s, like mass produced into vehicles, probably like the 2000s, right? The first vehicles were really like the Prius and all that. Now, the reason why many manufacturers are moving away from automatics to CVTs is because they're cheaper to make and they're actually cheaper to service because you don't have any gears inside. So it's kind of, it's pretty cheap to maintain. Now, what does the CVT actually do? Like I said, it has no actual planetary gears inside. So it's basically driven off, imagine like a pulley system with a belt that just spins. There's two pulleys, a belt that just spins, and it can go on infinitely. That's basically how a CVT works. Now, the reason why they design it is because it's great for all uses. Because as we mentioned in the Mustang, there was a 10-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual, and you're only limited to those gears. In the CVT, on the other hand, there's not really that limit because it can go on infinitely. As much as the motor will produce, the transmission can keep going. Because what the transmission's original purpose is, let's just go over that because I don't think I mentioned it right. The purpose of a transmission is to regulate the speed from the engine to the rear wheels or to the front wheels, whichever wheels drive the vehicle is. Because if you have a car that has only one gear, like let's say first gear, it'll be good on acceleration, but then you'll be doing like 40 miles an hour, not even 40, maybe like 30 miles an hour at like 7,000. So you wouldn't be able to go very fast. In turn, you can also have a car that's in like fourth gear. It would have horrible acceleration, but it could go down the highway at like 80 miles an hour. So the CVT sort of fills that sweet spot between an automatic and sort of not needing to have a bunch of gears, because the Mustang has 10. Most automatic transmissions have 6 nowadays, but this one doesn't really. There's no gear in the CVT. There's physically nothing in there. They call them low gear or high gear, but there's no physical like gear that's inside. It's driven off of a pulley system, as we said. And it's easy to develop, so it's cheap. That's why a lot of companies, you'll see a lot of the lower end cars like the Nissan Versas, the Civics, the Toyotas, like the Corollas and whatnot, they'll use these transmissions because they're cheap and they're sort of easy to maintain. But this is sort of the transmission that is not really car enthusiast favorite. Me personally, I hate the CVTs because it just there's nothing there. It literally feels like you're just giving it gas. That's it. Because this thing doesn't shift. As you guys heard back or when we took off, this thing does not shift. It just continues to maintain RPM. And as far, as much throttle as you give it, that's how much RPM it's going to maintain. So it's a very weird system. I understand why they develop it. You know what the point of it is for like economy and everything. It's just not for not for enthusiasts, I guess. And there are enthusiast cars out there, like, so you see right now I'm giving it some gas, and as long as I keep my throttle light or keep my foot on the throttle in that position, it'll just keep revving at 4,000 for the whole time, or until we run out of engine power. So the CVT is great for econo boxes and all that. Not very good when it comes to high-end sports cars or performance vehicles. That's more with the automatic and the manual. As you guys can see, I put it in sport mode, and it just does that same thing. It just kind of keeps the RPMs a little bit higher, but it's not, it's nothing crazy. It's not gonna blow your doors off. And of course, this one also has the manual paddle shifters on it. I don't know why they put them in these, in the CVTs, because it gives you the impression that it's shifting, but it really only regulates the RPM. So it's not, it's nothing mind-boggling or kind of crazy. But let me know down below what you guys think. What's your favorite type of transmission? For me, it really has to depend on the car. Like if I was buying a GT Mustang, I'd probably get a manual. If I was buying, obviously, something high sports car, and they gave me the option, I'd probably go for the dual clutch, just because the dual clutch is where it's at. If you guys notice, most like high performance cars have dual clutches, which is a regular automatic without a torque converter. We can make a video on describing what that is. And the perfect car to use would be the Shelby GT500, the new one. It has a 7-speed DCT dual clutch transmission, and it's insanely quick. Porsche has their PDK. But let me know down below what you guys think. What is your favorite transmission? Manual, automatic, traditional, or the CVT? And I'd love to hear from you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.